to OMN English News Report, broadcasting to you live. Today is Wednesday, the 23rd of September, 2020. My name is Surati Sali with our technician, Adil Usman. Today's bulletin is headlined with the following reports. Terrorism charges, Jawar Mohammed, Bekele Garba, and Hamza Borana responded to Ethiopia's prosecutors to trump up terrorism charges. Hachalu Hundessa memorial statue remains veiled, claiming it will upset Menelik fans. Competency of the government is challenged as intellectuals criticize terrorism charges. UN rights body is ready to support impartial investigation into the assassination of Hachalu and subsequent violence. Ethiopia's Ministry of Health claims COVID-19 is no longer a threat to federal elections and decides to conduct national elections. Government restrictions proposed for Eritrea 2020. And now for today's news. The Oromo Federalist Congress high-profile leaders Jawar Mohammed, Bekele Garba, and Hamza Borana responded to Ethiopia's prosecutors to trump up terrorism charges, saying that they are proud of being accused terrorists for challenging the regime in power, which is devoid of ideas and strategies in winning a free and fair elections, defendants' lawyer told OMN. Oromo Federalist Congress top leaders Jawar Mohammed, Bekele Garba, Hamza Borana, and Detention Afa are charged of terrorism alongside 19 other Oromo nationals, some of who are already in jail, and others who are based abroad. Political prisoners who are in jail since early July, in addition to the above-mentioned OFC figures, who are also charged with terrorism in the new case, are Mr. Gutu Mul'isa, Mr. Arafat Abubakar Kadir, Mr. Aman Kalubati, Mr. Alamayo Galata, Mr. Malesa Dripsa, OMN journalist, Mr. Shamsuddin Taha, and Mr. Bona Tibile. In addition, former security details of Jawar Mohammed, Gelam Wark Asafa, Getu Tarefe, Kamrat Hussein, Bashir Hussein, Sept Ako, Kenne Dumicha, Dawud Abdata, and OMN driver Mr. Bogale Diripsa are included in the terrorism case. Mr. Misganu Mul'ata, Oromo political prisoners lawyers, team member told OMN over the phone that 3 of the defendants are Oromo nationals living abroad, Dr. Tasgaye Ararsa, Dr. Berhane Meskel Ababisenyi, and journalist Dejene Gutama, OMN editor-in-chief. OMN is also charged with terrorism as a media outlet. According to Mr. Misganu, Jawar Mohammed said before the Ledata High Court that he and his comrades are not criminals but political prisoners, and that he is proud to be charged with terrorism by the Ethiopian system for the second time, merely for being a voice for the voiceless majority and struggling for justice and equality. Adding, Jawar said that the regime in power is plotting to exclude him and his comrades, being desperate that they cannot win the election, as they saw it millions rallying for OFC in the public forums and party held in various places in Oromia. Jawar also remarked that neither Iskender Naga nor Ledatu Ayalo are terrorists. He said Iskender is jailed because the regime in power learned Iskender would win in the elections in Addis Ababa, and Ledatu is arrested because he proposed that a transitional government should be formed. Jawar further said that the regime is arresting political opponents because it has failed to address political questions. Mr. Bekele Garba on his part said that he was sentenced to 8 years imprisonment with a similar trumped-up charge during EPRDF time and dismissed the allegations of involving in terrorism acts. Hamza Borana, a former journalist and activist who recently joined OFC, also said that he is proud to be labeled a terrorist by the Ethiopian regime, which is known for jailing competitive political figures. Mr. Misganu said that all political prisoners received the documents of charges and that they are appointed to show up on September 24, 2020. The court also ordered prison administration to present Mr. Dejenet Afa, who was absent on September 21, 2020. On another account, Mr. Ledeto Ayalo, who was charged with instigating the youth against the government and holding unauthorized rifles, is set to be released on a bail for 100,000 birr. It is to be remembered that a court acquitted Ledeto recently, but police rejected the court order to release him. In another development, courts ordered that Burayu City Police Head-in-Chief should be arrested and appear before the courts for hiding the whereabouts of Mr. Misha Chirri, an American citizen who was charged but acquitted by court on bail. Court order was passed a couple weeks ago that Misha could be released on 10,000 birr bail. However, Burayu City Police kept Misha Chirri in an unknown prison defying court order. His brother Kiteso Chirri explained on Facebook, saying, A week ago today, he was supposed to be out on bail, but he was taken away by security forces instead. No government agency officially took the responsibility for his continued detention, nor was any reason given. Per U.S. Embassy own admission, this is a violation of Ethiopian and international laws on treatment of detainees. No consular visit has been granted. Yesterday, he had a federal court hearing scheduled. The hearing was for prosecutors, federal police, and Oromia police to appear and explain why Misha was still detained. Federal prosecutor, federal police, and defense lawyers were present. Oromia police never showed up, and Misha was never brought to court either. After 45 minutes of waiting, the judge ordered federal police to forcefully bring Oromia police today, September 23rd, 2020, to explain the grounds of Misha's continued detention. A statue erected at Ambo University to remember Hachalu Hundessa, an Oromo artist and political icon who was assassinated last June, remained veiled at Ambo University. A statue erected with money contributed by Ambo University academic and administrative staff to celebrate Hachalu Hundessa was disliked by authorities, including Shimalis Abdissa, Oromia region president, and his Prosperity Party members, because it resembled the statue of Emperor Menelik II, which stands at the heart of Finfinne. Ambo University sources told OMN. The statue portrays Hachalu Hundessa sitting on a horseback and the horse lifting its front legs preparing for galloping, a typical imitation of Oromo horseman style with a long-held tradition of horse riding skill. However, Shimalis Abdissa and his party expressed their disappointment over the way the murdered artist was portrayed, stating that it would upset fans of Emperor Menelik and their neo-Naftanya members who celebrated Hachalu's assassination overtly and covertly. It is to be remembered the artist made a remark in an interview with OMN a week prior to his murder that Emperor Menelik confiscated the horse which was used to erect his statue from an Oromo horseman named Sida Debele. Oromo intellectuals and activists criticized the charge initiating against 24 Oromo nationals, including Jawar Mohammed and Bekele Garba of Oromo Federalist Congress. Dr. Eskel Gabisa, professor of history and African studies at Kettering University and vocal Oromo art activist, said in an interview with OMN Afan Oromo that the level of leadership inefficiency under the rule of Abiy Ahmed is a misfortune to the nation. Eskel said that the prime minister, who was acknowledged before his parliament a few months after coming into power, that the system which he served for 27 years was a terrorist system that attacked dissent voices and political opponents, is now repeating the same dramatic charges against political leaders. Eskel added the move is a fallback for a country which highly demands a democratic system. Yahya Bashir, Oromo icon activist, on his part, said there is no worse terrorist than Abiy Ahmed's regime, which is engaged in killing civilians, robbing citizens through its security apparatus, and jailing political opponents. The current terrorism charges against prominent Oromo political figures such as Jawar Mohammed, Bekele Garba, Hamza Borana, and Dijanet Afa is a plan designed by Abiy Ahmed to exclude these influential personalities from the upcoming election, which Abiy Ahmed is planned to conduct due to local and international pressures, despite his parliament's recent decision to postpone it for indefinite time. At the Standard, the reputable online journal reported that UN High Commissioner for Human Rights is ready to support a thorough investigation into the June 29, 2020 assassination of prominent Oromo artist Hachalu Hundessa and subsequent violence. At the Standard quoted Michelle Bachelet, UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, in its publication of September 22, 2020, as saying in her latest message on Global Human Rights Update, her office was ready to support a thorough investigation into the June 29 assassination of prominent Oromo artist Hachalu Hundessa. At the Standard added that Michelle Bachelet's statement recognized the gravity of the assassination and the fallout in its wake. In Ethiopia, despite notable efforts in recent years to bring about meaningful human rights-based reforms, the killing of an Oromo singer and activist in July triggered protests and intercommunal violence across the country, the statement said. My office is ready to support a thorough, independent, impartial, and transparent investigation by the government into the killing and subsequent violence and to support the government's ongoing legislative reforms. At least 176, 10 of whom security forces were killed in Oromia and Addis Ababa in the immediate aftermath of the assassination of Hachalu. More than 9,000 people who are detained following the violence, according to the government's own account. Arrests include prominent opposition politicians, academics, journalists, and several critics of the government, some of whom are now charged with terrorism, inciting violence, and illegal possession of arms, among others. The Ethiopian rubber stamp parliament, which is 100% occupied by Prosperity Party members of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, decided yesterday that national elections should be conducted this year. Ethiopian calendar 2020 GC, date not determined, reversing its decision of last May that postponed elections with an excuse of COVID-19 pandemic. The parliament is not only postponed the national elections but also extended term of the legislative and executives of the federal regional governments indefinitely until International Health Organization declared that the pandemic is controlled. The unconstitutional decision of the Ethiopian parliament was contested by major opposition parties such as OFC and OLF, and a call was made by these parties and others for political dialogue as to how to handle election business amid the pandemic. Parliaments came up with a new decision following a report of the Ministry of Health of the country that COVID-19 is not a threat any longer to conduct elections. Critics reject that the main cause of elections postponement was not COVID-19 pandemic. They argue that the number of coronavirus cases was only below 100 when the parliament made the decision, and that it has now reached over 70,000, and that the rate of death is ever increasing from time to time. Dr. Awal Qasim Allo, a professor at Keele University, UK, debated on BBC Afan Oromo that the election postponement was a political decision rather than a health-triggered cause. He said that conducting election in a situation where majority political party leaders are jailed and where a political space is so stifled that a sham election will not help the country like Ethiopia, which is in a process of transition. Awal said, even if political leaders who are in prison are released, they need sufficient time and space to make campaigns to participate in a genuine election. If the election is to be conducted while major opposition leaders are in prison, it will cost Ethiopia more than helping for a democratic process, Awal added. Members of the Oromo public are rejecting a proposed restriction on Irrecha 2020 celebrations in Oromia this year. The Gada Assembly of Tulama decided that Oromo Thanksgiving ceremony festivals known as Irrecha was to take place next month on October 3rd and 4th in Bishoftu and Finfinne, respectively. Pressures are mounting by government-owned media, which have suggested Irrecha participants should be invited by government authorities instead of attending freely. The government-owned media outlets argue that the number of participants should be limited because due to COVID-19 concern. However, it has been protested that COVID-19 cannot be a reason to limit public attendance, contending when preventive steps can be applied through a well-trained Gada group who have guided Irrecha events for the past years, known as the Fole Gada. The Fole group has a positive track record of hosting Irrecha celebrations. They possess over 20,000 volunteers, adult and youth members, who have successfully guided the 2017, 2018, and 2019 ceremonies. Oromo fans of the Irrecha ceremony reached out to Oromia Media Network to state the Thanksgiving event is an open space ceremony where physical distancing measures can be controlled and attendees may be guided to follow protective steps. Locals have added that any excuse by the government that cite COVID-19 as a pretext restricts the Oromo people would aim to stifle potential grievances of attendees. According to locals, Irrecha is a peaceful annual ceremony where people are expected to offer thanks to God and should not be prevented. In other developments, the Oromo fathers known as the Abagada have received a site plan for Irrecha celebrations in Finfinne from the city mayor, including a location to be permanently preserved for the celebration and other related cultural activities. It should be noted that Finfinne Thanksgiving celebrations were resumed in 2019 at the capital city of Oromia for the first time after more than a 150-year ban was imposed on Oromos by Ethiopian authorities. This year's festivities are cautiously anticipated, given the hotly contested political situation that continues to unfold in Ethiopia. Oromo communities around the world are also preparing for Irrecha festival. Celebrations for 2020 have already commenced. The Oromo community of Minnesota is expected to host Irrecha on September the 26th, a day after their grand rally, which is expected to take place on September 25th. Washington, D.C. is also expected to host Irrecha on October 3rd, 2020, a day after their grand rally, which is expected to take place on the 2nd of October. That's all the news I have for now. An English news broadcast will return to you live on Oromia Media Network. But right now, stay tuned for further broadcasts on OMN. Until we meet again, my name is Sora Tisali. Take care and stay safe. Goodbye.
Welcome to